Good afternoon, Yasmin. Counting down to the first 100 days in office is sort of a mixed bag here at the Trump White House. They know that is a marker by which they are going to be judged. What have they accomplished? What have they done? And at the same time, they want to say it's not that important or predictive about what the Trump presidency can ultimately be. Most of what we've seen thus far have been executive orders and nothing legislatively in a big picture sense. So this week, they are working hard to try to move the ball on a few things. First of all, government funding to keep the government open. That is a deadline that they must reach by the end of the week. And that's something that Congress is working on to try to keep funding, but also to provide money for the border wall, the president believes is an important priority, as well as increasing defense spending. Also looking at repeal of the Obamacare health care law. That will be much tougher to do. There's progress, they say, being made with some changes to the bill and more effort, more conversation with House Republicans, but a big question mark about how soon and how successfully that can move forward. And then the president threw in a surprise on Friday, saying he wants to unveil tax reform and tax cuts middle of the week. That was not something that was on the plan for senior advisors, but it is part of his campaign plan that he wants to try to deliver on. So expect something to be unveiled for tax cuts and his tax proposal. It will be a big week, and he will cap it with a visit to Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, where he will hold a campaign rally next Saturday night to mark the 100 days in office. So at one time, he is trying to say it's not that important. The timing doesn't matter that much. And at the same time, he knows there will be a lot of attention, and he's going to embrace that marker at the start of his presidency. Yasmin?
Not that important, but certainly acting like it seems. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell for us. Thank you. Joining me now to talk all about this, Ron Nixon, Washington correspondent for the New York Times and columnist for the Boston Herald. Adriana Cohen, thank you guys both for joining me. Very much appreciate it. Ron, a government shutdown looming. How's it going to look for the Trump administration if the government shuts down in his first 100 days?
I think it will reflect somewhat badly on the Trump administration because Republicans control all three branches of government. So you can't then go and say, well, just Democrats are to blame here. So I think that, you know, they're aware of that, which is why you see this activity to sort of do something before the deadline.
Adriana, the president kind of doing some wheeling and dealing here as well. He is offering Democrats funding for Obamacare subsidies in exchange for border wall funding. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, he's like, that is a non-starter. So is the president here really willing to shut down the government over health care?
You know, he very well may take that tact, given the fact that I agree that it's not good optics for Republicans. But last time around in 2013, when Senator Ted Cruz, you know, he orchestrated shutting the government down, people thought this would be disastrous for Republicans. And as you remember, a year later, they still won the House and control of Congress, both chambers. And so it proved to not be disastrous in the long term. So President Trump and his administration might be willing to take that risk and play some hardball with negotiations. But there are certain things that we know that Democrats will not make concessions on. They politically cannot support the border wall. Their base will not tolerate that. They're also not going to support defunding of Planned Parenthood, for example. But hopefully they will be willing to negotiate with Republicans on areas where they can find consensus, like such as, you know, discretionary spending on other domestic policies, or increasing defense spending is something I think both parties can agree on, given all the grave threats we face around the world.
Adriana, you think the health care vote can be pushed through in the next 7 days? You think it's even realistic here? Could there be that much of a swing of votes from the last time?
You know, I have to say, I don't feel that confident about it. You know, given the fact that, first of all, we haven't seen the text yet. We have to read what's in it. But you know, as you know, President Trump has said that its plan has gotten much better. It's going to give more power to the states to carve out certain exemptions from essential benefits and so forth. But they need 216 votes. And as you know, the Republican Party is so divided between the Freedom Caucus members and the Moderate Tuesday group. So it remains to be seen whether or not they're going to be able to form consensus yet again.
Ron, the biggest foreign policy issue here for the president right now, obviously North Korea, Tuesday being another big anniversary. They could launch another missile test. What are the president's options here if, in fact, that happens?
Well, you know, it's hard to say because the foreign policy has been so unpredictable as to what their options are. General Mattis, Secretary Tillerson have all laid out various proposals, but in some cases they seem to be polar opposites of each other.
But Ron, not to interrupt, but put this in the scheme of 100 days here. You have a president who's got a 100-day mark looming. He's got a foreign policy crisis over his head. North Korea possibly launches another missile test. That's his test right there. What does he do?
Well, again, I don't think anyone knows what he will do because his foreign policy has been so unpredictable here. And what are his options? I mean, I don't think that a military option is something that they want to pursue. It's just really hard to see what they could actually do and trying to come up with something to claim as a victory in that first 100 days, other than the rhetoric that we see going back and forth.
But I wonder if that's going to be an influencer if, in fact, North Korea does launch another missile test. He looks at his 100-day mark and he says, OK, I'm going to make a decision to do this or that because of the fact that I want to make these accomplishments in these first 100 days. Adriana, I want to turn to taxes now. The president announcing he wants to put a tax plan out there on Wednesday. His staff surprised by this. His own budget director saying a plan wouldn't be ready until after May. So if that is the case, it's not really looking good for President Trump right now on his tax plan.
You're right. There was a pivot there because originally it was going to be well into the summer before we saw, a comprehensive tax reform proposal being laid out. But I think this is a good move for President Trump if he can pass it because, most Americans believe they're being taxed too much. A recent poll came out saying 55% of Americans believe they're being taxed too much. And he did promise on the campaign trail to cut taxes. And so I think we're going to see massive tax cuts. That's what he's proposing, cutting the corporate tax rates from 35% to at least 20, if not 15. He's going to reduce the 7 tax brackets down to 3. I also hope that he cuts the individual tax bracket because otherwise it's really bad optics to say, hey, you're taking care of corporations but not middle-class families. And so I very much would like to see him push through a reduction in taxes for individuals. And then also he should support and cut taxes for small businesses because they are the backbone of our country and our economy. And they help create jobs, as you know. And so I hope that he's able to find consensus here. We know he definitely needs a win, especially after the blundered rollout of the first health care bill.
Well, and if I was in his position, I was about to put a tax bill out there or make tax reforms, I would want to make sure that anything that I put out there would benefit the people that voted for me and put me in office in the first place. Ron, we're covering a lot of topics here. Before I let you go, Attorney General Jeff Sessions and some local police chiefs, they got into a fight Friday over their threat to cut funding to sanctuary cities. So in a press release, Sessions said the NYPD was soft on crime. That sparked the police commissioner to hold a press conference. Let's take a listen to that.
But when I read that statement by DOJ this afternoon, my blood began to boil. Murders down 82%, shootings down 81%, overall crime is down 76%. In 2017, murders were down 11 murders again, shootings are down 41, and overall crime is down 5.4%. To say we're soft on crime is absolutely ludicrous.
Republican presidential nominee, President Trump, always put blue first when he was on that campaign trail. Now you have Attorney General Jeff Sessions saying the NYPD is soft on crime. Ron, is this a smart thing to do?
I think it's a curious tack to take because in addition to the president, Attorney General Sessions has also been a big proponent of respecting the men and women in law enforcement. And to go after New York City in particular, along with a number of other cities, for not participating with ICE and detaining immigrants who have been jailed. It is a curious tactic, and you could see them possibly losing that particular constituency because those people have voted for the president over Hillary Clinton, and it's just curious. I mean, I was just astonished when I saw the letter go out to those cities, particularly New York City. And as the commissioner mentioned, crime has dropped tremendously there. So I'm not sure that's something that you want to do because at some point you are going to need their assistance.
Yeah, I'm a New Yorker, and from what I understand, you do not go after the NYPD. That is for sure. Adriana Cohen and Ron Nixon, thank you both for joining me. Up next, as all eyes are on North Korea.